appreciate our bodies, we still have that nagging voice, and it's often that inner critic and that critical voice that prevents us from really moving forward in our journey. And sometimes we can be doing really well for a long time and we haven't had the food guilt or the negative body thoughts, and out of nowhere you'll just have a day where it feels like any progress that you've made over the last few months or years, you've gone completely backwards. And that's kind of why I wanted to break down this voice, because it isn't something that you can get rid of entirely, but at least with some of these tips today, you're going to be able to hopefully move through those days a little easier instead of completely spiraling out of control and just digging yourself this big rut that feels like it's impossible to get out of. So this inner critic, like this voice that you hear, has absolutely nothing good to say about you. And this is kind of our lived experience, especially in our developmental years, that we've just internalized. And you might notice that when your inner critic is getting loud and becoming overpowering, there's a certain tone that this voice uses. So the next time that you're going through this negative thought spiral, I want you to tune into the tone of the voice and notice if it's somebody that sounds familiar. Because unfortunately, a lot of times when we have an inner critic, it is actually the voice of a parent or guardian, or somebody that maybe was constantly criticizing us and putting us down when we were younger. And so unfortunately, usually the voice is recognizable because it is somebody from our early developmental years. So, hey Dana. So notice the next time that you are going into this downward spiral, if that voice sounds familiar and the kind of tone that, hey Christina, it's all good, we just started, it's fine. I was a couple minutes late because I had an allergic reaction and my upper lip swelled up. But today we're diving into the inner critic. So notice if that voice sounds like somebody that you know from your past, because there's a really good chance that you do recognize it. And then notice the type of tone, because it's very rarely encouraging. It's usually very snarky and sarcastic and condescending. And there's 3 different parts of the inner critic and how you can recognize it when it's showing up. So part of it is personalization. So let's say, for example, you had a friend that seemed kind of off and maybe they were just giving you really short texts, like maybe 1-word answers and things like that. And right away you're like, oh my God, this friend's pissed off at me. What did I do? And then you start ruminating over all of the possible reasons that this friend could be pissed off at you, when in reality, maybe she's busy. Maybe she's running her kids from place to place and just doesn't really have time to answer you fully, but doesn't want to completely ignore you. But that inner critic right away makes it about us and attaches a story to it with absolutely no evidence. And again, right away we're blaming ourselves, and the voice might sound like, you're so stupid, you do this in every friendship, this is why no one likes you, this is why you have no friends. And it goes from the friend giving some short text answers to us completely spiraling. And it starts with one initial thought, and then it's like you just slide downhill and the thoughts get worse and worse and more dramatic. And there's absolutely no evidence to prove that this friend is even upset with you. She could be sick, she could, be running kids and being busy, but right away, our inner critic is trying to make it all about us. Another good way to figure out if your inner critic is taking over is if you start engaging in should talk. So, I really should get my ass to the gym. I really shouldn't be eating this. When you use should and shouldn't, it's your inner critic talking. it is not your truest self. And that's a pretty good indication that that's kind of taking over, because when you're using words like should and shouldn't, it comes with this undertone as if like, you're so stupid, how don't you know this? Like, what are you doing? Like, when you use should and shouldn't, you are basically self-shaming for how you either behave or are not behaving. So that's a really good telltale sign that your inner critic is doing the talking and running the show for the day. And another one is when you make generalizations or start labeling yourself. So let's say, for example, you made a simple clerical work mistake, and not a big deal, but right away you're internalizing, oh my God, I can't believe I screwed this up. I fuck everything up. And it goes from the initial thought where you made one tiny mistake at work, and then I can't get anything right, I'm gonna get fired, I'm such a shitty employee, and on and on. And as you go through from that initial thought, the thoughts just spiral downwards. If you're late for work one day, oh my God, I'm always late, why can't I ever be on time? Well, if you actually looked at the evidence, there's probably many days where you are on time for work, but you've now just made that generalization that because you made that mistake one time, that you're a fuck up. And I hate when people label themselves as things like, I'm an emotional eater, I'm anxious, I'm this, I'm that. Because then we like attach our identity to that label, and we seek evidence to prove that we are so. So for example, if you're somebody who's like, I'm just a sugar addict. No, you're not. Don't identify as a sugar addict. You just enjoy sugar. Because when you label yourself as something like that, you literally give all of your power away. So this voice sometimes can be really overpowering, and you might have days where it's much louder than other days. And so the goal really is to turn down the volume on that voice, because when it's so loud and you're trying to be reasonable, it's kind of like trying to talk to your friend that's standing beside you at a Metallica concert. Like you can't really hear each other, and you're trying to yell, and you can't really get your point across because that voice is just so loud. And the reason why we can't completely get rid of this voice is because it actually does serve a purpose. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But one of the very, very first things that you can do to overcome that inner critic is to name that voice. Give it a name so that you can separate yourself from that voice. So I named mine Catherine. Now, if there's any Catherines in here, I'm very sorry. It's just a name that I resonated with, and I feel like Karen is too overused. So I named mine Catherine. So as soon as that voice comes in and tries to talk me out of doing things that I want to do, and it's a fear voice, I will address that voice by her name. And I will say, fuck off, Catherine, I don't have time for you today. And when I name her and separate myself from that voice, I'm able to then sit back into the role as the observer, which is just so much easier in working with this inner critic because you're not completely attached to her. You're able to kind of zoom out, see your thoughts for what they are, and then act from there. So it's really, really important, even though it sounds crazy and it sounds like you might have multiple personalities, give that inner critic a name so that when she's trying to take over, as soon as you address her by her name, all of a sudden, her power decreases a little bit. You're able to sit back as an observer and figure out exactly what she's saying. And once you start listening to the things that she's saying, I want you to start with figuring out, like, what exactly is she trying to protect you from? Like, why is she saying these things? And that's exactly what that inner critic's voice purpose is to protect you, which sounds kind of like counterintuitive, right? So, and I'll explain. So when your inner critic, let's say for example, you are getting ready for work and the bosses from head office are coming down, you might be getting ready for work and you're like, oh my God, my hair looks stupid. It's not working. Why can't it just cooperate? I always have this shitty hair. And so you try the updo, you try a half do, you try something simple, and it just seems like no matter what you do with your hair, it's not good enough and it's not right. And then you go into this downward spiral. And maybe you change your outfit like 10 times and you're like, I have nothing to wear. Everything looks like shit on me. And we right away think it's because our hair looks like shit and our clothes don't look good on us because we're fat or whatever. But here's what's actually happening. Your inner critic is creating those stories because it's trying to protect you from either judgment of those bosses from head office, failure, embarrassment. So it figures if I put her down enough, she's just gonna call in sick and not come, and then she'll be home and she'll be safe and sound, and we don't have to worry about her getting embarrassed. If you're getting ready for a family event with like your in-laws or a date and you go through like 10 different outfits and right away everything looks stupid on you, you have nothing to wear and you don't even want to go anymore. That's what that inner critical voice wants, because if you don't go to that event, you're saving yourself from judgment, rejection, embarrassment, comments from family members. And so that's why you can't completely get rid of that voice. I'll share an example from my own life. I have known for at least 4 years that I wanted to coach full time. And that inner critical voice was like, oh my God, you can't do that. It's not stable enough. It's not this enough. And what if you fail? And what if no one wants to work with you? And what if you end up not making any money for years and you go broke and you starve to death? like it started with, ooh, this is a little scary because it's unstable compared to my monthly salary job, to I'm going to go broke and starve to death. I'm going to die. But it didn't get there from this thought to that extreme thought. I went through like the little downward spiral. And it was terrifying, and it took me 4 years to do the damn thing because I was so freaking scared. And that's what that voice wants. It wants to keep you safe. And even if that means being miserable, humans, they really, really like predictability and the familiar, even if that means complete misery. I'm sure we've all been in this place where we know we need a change. We know that, we're unhappy in our bodies. We're unhappy with how our relationship is with food. But the idea of stepping out into something new is so petrifying that we just choose to go on another meal plan or another diet again, because we would rather stay in that cycle of misery because we know what's coming. We can predict our failure. We know what happens after the failure. We know that eventually we're going to hop on another meal plan and keep going in the merry-go-round. But if we step out of that cycle into something new, that's absolutely terrifying to the reptilian part of our brain, because we want that familiarity, because that means that we're safe even though we're miserable. And it takes a really, really long time to move beyond that comfort zone. Because your comfort zone is comfortable until it's not anymore. And usually in order to change, our comfort zone has to become so painful that we can't take it anymore and we have to change. But what keeps us in that comfort zone for so long is that inner critic trying to talk you out of doing the scary things that aren't actually even that scary when you look at the big picture. So for example, me being afraid to coach full time. Well, guess what? I'm not going to starve to death and die. Like, worst case scenario, I go back to massaging. Big deal. I'm not going to starve to death and die. But that voice literally made me feel like that's exactly what was going to happen. So once you've gone through the things that this voice is spewing out, writing them all down. Sometimes these thoughts come so fast, it's like a tornado and they're just swirling, and then your heart rate goes up and it's just like panic city with this swirling tornado of thoughts. But if you take time to slow down and actually figure out everything that she's saying, then you can actually, like, you have to, of course, name her first and separate yourself from the inner critic, then assess everything that she's spewing out. And once you know exactly what she's trying to say, asking yourself, okay, what exactly is my inner critic trying to protect me from right now? Is it rejection, embarrassment, judgment, failure? What is she trying to protect me from right now? And from there, if all of the worst case scenarios came true, would it actually be that bad? If a family member made a comment about your weight, would it actually be that bad? If you did make a mistake at work doing a presentation in front of the boss at head office, would it actually be that bad? Because 99% of the time, the things that we picture in the worst case scenario never ever happen. Think about, maybe I shouldn't use dental anxiety right now because I had a very bad dental episode, but most of us go in for like a filling and have to take Ativan or something before because we're so scared. And it's in and out, it's no big deal. And everything that we conjured up in our head as the worst case scenario never came true. So asking yourself, what is she trying to protect me from right now? And if any of those things happened, like the absolute worst case scenario, would I be okay? And then you need to start using truth statements. So if, for example, one of your voices is like, okay, I always fuck everything up because you made that mistake at work. Ask yourself, is that actually true? Do I screw every single thing up at work? And start collecting evidence for when you've gotten it right, when you do a good job at work. If you were late one time for work and you're like, oh my God, I always do this, I'm always late, I can never be on time. Is that true? Seek the evidence to prove otherwise. Like the friend being really short through texting. Oh my God, she hates me. This is why I have no friends. No one likes me. This happens every time. Is that actually true? Can you find evidence that there are people who love you and care for you? And once you're able to separate yourself from that tornado of crazy thoughts and break this down, that inner critic will not hold you back from doing things. It will be there at a low volume once you've went through this whole process, and then you're able to actually do the thing. So if you are scared to step into the gym for the first time and you have this thought that everybody's going to judge me, people are going to go, oh, I wonder how long this one's going to last. Separate yourself from that thought and be like, okay, Catherine, listen here. This is what you're saying. What are you trying to protect me from by telling me that people are going to make fun of me at the gym? She's probably trying to protect you from changing your life because you at the gym and then starting to get healthier is unknown. Maybe she's trying to protect you from judgment of other gym goers. Maybe she's even trying to prevent you from going because she doesn't want you to get injured, because that's of course a potential. She's always trying to protect you from something, bless her heart. But the thing is, this voice, if you don't overcome it and start doing the things that you want to do despite the fear, she's going to keep you in this cycle of misery. And that's the saddest thing, is she's going to prevent you from finding love and happiness, because when you gain love, happiness, a raise at work or a promotion, now you have something to lose. And her job is to make sure you have nothing, so that you never ever have to feel heartbreak or pain or disappointment. That is literally this voice's sole purpose, to prevent you from feeling disappointed, let down, hurt, heartbroken, angry. And so as much as we hate that little bitch, she does serve a purpose. She is trying to protect you, bless her heart. But as long as you are able to move through this process, giving her a name and separating yourself from her, not identifying with her, and then you can step into that observer role, asking, what are you trying to protect me from right now? And figuring out exactly what that is. It really doesn't take long. You can burn through something like this in a minute or two, which is going to save you time in the long run, because you're not going to be changing your outfit 20 times. You can just sit on the edge of your bed and listen to what she's got to say, and then start hitting her with some truth. So if she's telling you that you have no friends, no one likes you, prove her wrong. Find the evidence to show that what she's saying isn't true. I hope that was helpful for you guys. And again, the reason why I even wanted to bring up the inner critic is because intuitive eating is completely new territory for most people, because we have been taught that dieting is the way to go and that's the way to live, and we should just be on a diet for the rest of our lives. And so intuitive eating is literally the opposite of that, and we don't know what that is. So then there's so much fear. And we can, make these strides in intuitive eating and, start feeling really good in our bodies. And then bam, this little bitch shows up and tries to ruin everything. And when we have one of these days, it can feel like any progress that we've made in the work that we're doing on ourselves is completely gone. And that's definitely not the case. I still have these days. I have body image days that usually come around once a month at Shark Week, when I am bloated and swollen and I feel like crap. And, again, I still had the inner critic. She managed to talk me out of chasing my dreams for 4 fucking years. That's 4 years I can't get back. So, we all still have these days, and it doesn't matter how much work you do on yourself. You're still going to have these days, but at least if you have a toolkit to move through them, they aren't going to completely ruin your whole day. It'll take maybe 20 minutes in the morning to process some of this, and then you can go on with having a good day and not letting that voice hold you back from what you want. So I hope that was helpful. Also a reminder, the latest podcast episode of More Than a Body dropped on Monday, and I did post a link to access the episode in here. It's available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Castbox, anywhere else that you can listen to podcasts. And I would love if you guys would share it even with a friend, share it on social media, because all of the top rated health podcasts are all diet culture bullshit. And I would just love for all of the body positive, body image, and intuitive eating podcasts to top the charts, so that we can slowly get rid of that diet BS. But yeah, thank you guys so much for spending Tuesday night with me. Again, these are going to be weekly now that my mouth is healed up. And I should probably mention too, there are 2 spots left for one-on-one coaching. One of the spots was filled yesterday. So if you guys are interested in one-on-one mentorship, just let me know. Probably won't be running a group program until September. And I did start a wait list for that as well. And this one is, if you've ever done a group program with me, it's been very heavy on the intuitive eating and emotional eating and things. This go around of group coaching is going to be a full 5 weeks of body image work first, because I have been working with a body image therapist who actually was a therapist in some eating disorder clinics. And so I've been working under her and have learned a lot. So I really wanted to make sure that this group program was really heavy on the body image stuff. So the first 5 weeks are actually all body image. And then we move into emotional eating and some tools that you can use to navigate situations such as the one that we just talked about today. And then the last portion, the last 3 to 4 weeks, are the intuitive eating portion and healing your relationship with exercise and food. So that is what we've got planned. I will put a link below this live as well for those of you watching the replay, and that is where you can sign up and just be put on the wait list for the fall group coaching. And anybody that puts themselves on the wait list and then they decide to sign up come September, you're going to be entered in for a 60-minute one-on-one call with me while you're within the program, instead of just attending the bi-weekly group coaching calls. You're going to get a one-on-one with me. So I will post that once the live uploads, and let me know in the comments if you are watching the replay. And thank you, ladies, for joining me tonight. I definitely think I'm going to do a lot more evening live, simply because in the morning, that's usually when I have the most energy and feel like super inspired. I have all my good ideas in the morning, but everybody is working and busy, so I just prefer this. So that's all I have for you guys tonight. If you have any questions about what I just discussed today, just send me a message. I do not have a virtual assistant that lives overseas. It's all me. Most of the times, because I don't like texting, I'll send voice messages, so you definitely know it's me. But yeah, please fire those away, because that is why I'm here. And thank you guys for joining me tonight. You don't have to